It's late. The house is quiet. You're in that half-asleep place where the world feels soft and far away. And then you hear it. A sound outside your window. Not loud, but close. Something you can't immediately place. Something that doesn't sound like wind or traffic or the usual settling of the house at night. Something alive. You lie there listening, and the longer you listen, the more certain you become that whatever is out there knows exactly where you are. Most people pull the covers up and tell themselves it's nothing, that it was just the neighborhood, just the trees, just the night playing tricks. But it wasn't nothing. The sounds that come through your window at night are a language, an ancient one, and the birds making them have been communicating in that language for millions of years, long before there were houses, long before there were windows, long before there was anyone lying awake trying to understand what they were hearing. Tonight, we're going to translate it. Welcome back to Backyard Bird Mind. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to learn will change the way you listen to the night around your home forever. In this video, we're going through 8 of the most common and most significant nighttime bird sounds you might hear outside your window, what's making them, what they mean, and why, in some cases, what you hear in the dark says something specific about the world right outside your door. Stay until the end, because the last sound on this list is the one that people describe as the most affecting, the one that once you know what it is, you will never hear the same way again. If you've heard a deep, resonant series of hoots in the night, low and rhythmic, almost like a voice, you have almost certainly been listening to a great horned owl. The great horned owl is the most widely distributed owl in North America, present in every state, and one of the few large predators that has actually expanded its reign as human development has spread. It does not avoid suburbs. It does not avoid cities. It hunts in backyards, in parks, along the edges of neighborhoods, in the trees directly above the houses of people who have no idea it's there. Its call, a series of 3 to 8 low hoots, often described as sounding like, "Who's awake? Me too," carries extraordinary distances. On still nights, a great horned owl's call can be heard from half a mile away. The sound has a physical quality to it, a resonance that seems to come from somewhere deeper than just the trees. What you're hearing when a great horned owl calls at night is almost always one of 2 things: territory establishment or pair communication. Great horned owls begin their breeding cycle earlier than almost any other North American bird, often in December and January, when the nights are longest and coldest. The calls you hear in the deep winter dark are frequently a mated pair calling back and forth to each other, the male's lower voice and the female's slightly higher pitch weaving together across the cold air. They mate for life, and they call to each other through the night. If you lie in bed in January and hear that sound outside your window, low, deliberate, patient, you are listening to a conversation between 2 birds who have been together for years and who will be together, calling back and forth across the dark for years more. There are few things in the natural world that feel more settled and more ancient than that sound. This one surprises people because most of us associate mockingbirds with daytime. But the northern mockingbird, one of the most musically gifted birds in North America, capable of learning and accurately reproducing the songs of dozens of other species, sings at night, persistently, sometimes for hours without stopping, sometimes all night long, and it is almost always an unmated male. Research on mockingbird nocturnal singing has confirmed what birders have long observed. Male mockingbirds without mates sing significantly more at night than paired males. The night singing is not random. It is targeted at attracting a female. The male runs through his full repertoire, cycling through the songs of other species he has memorized, adding new ones as he ages, demonstrating to any listening female that he is experienced, complex, and musically accomplished. The more songs a male can produce, the more attractive he is as a mate. A male mockingbird has been documented producing over 200 distinct song types in a single night. If you have a mockingbird singing outside your window at 2 in the morning in the spring, you are listening to a male at the height of his effort. Everything he has, every song he has ever learned, every note he has ever mastered is in that performance.
He is not keeping you awake, he is auditioning. And if the singing stops, if you go to bed one night and realize you haven't heard him, it almost certainly means he found her. The name is misleading. The eastern screech owl does not in fact screech.
Its most common call is a long, descending whinny, a trembling, melancholy sound that seems to fall through the air, like something slowly losing its footing. Once you've heard it described as a tiny horse crying in a tree, you will never unhear that description. But its second call, the one responsible for its name, is something different entirely. A long, quavering trill that rises and falls, deeply unsettling in the dark, frequently described by people who've heard it for the first time as sounding like a person in distress. Calls to emergency services have been made because of eastern screech owls. The eastern screech owl is tiny, barely larger than a man's fist, and extraordinarily well camouflaged. It roosts in tree cavities and the holes of dead branches, pressing itself against the bark and becoming, to all visible appearances, part of the wood. You could walk past one 100 times without knowing it was there. But at night, particularly in spring when pairs are establishing territories and communicating between nest sites, the screech owl becomes one of the most audible birds in the suburban landscape. Its calls carry through closed windows and over the sound of fans and air conditioning units with a clarity that seems disproportionate to its size. If you hear what sounds like something crying softly in the tree outside your bedroom window, falling, wavering, intimate, it is almost certainly a screech owl. Not distress, not danger. A small bird, barely the weight of a handful of coins, doing what it has always done in the dark, calling to its mate through the leaves. This one depends on where you live. If your home is within range of a lake, particularly in the northern states, in New England, in the Great Lakes region, in the upper Midwest, there is a sound that carries across water at night that no one who has heard it ever fully forgets. The common loon calls in 4 distinct ways. The tremolo, a rapid, wavering call that does sound unmistakably like laughter, is the one most often heard at night, particularly when the loon is disturbed or communicating alarm. The wail, a long, rising cry that carries across miles of open water, is the territorial call, the call that says, "I am here, and this is mine." Both sounds, heard at night across open water, do something to people that is difficult to describe and easy to understand. They sound ancient. They sound like a world before human settlement, a world of open water and cold air, and something calling out of the dark with a voice that belongs to no creature you can easily name. The loon has been calling across these lakes for millions of years, long before the houses on the shore, long before the docks, the boats, the lights across the water. If you hear it through your window at night, you are hearing something that has not changed in all of that time. The same call across the same dark water, for longer than our species has existed to listen to it. Most people know woodpeckers as baytime birds, and most of them are. But if you've ever heard a sharp, rhythmic knocking on wood, or on metal, or on the side of a house, in the hours just before dawn, in that darkness that feels like night but technically isn't, you may have encountered the exception. Several woodpecker species, particularly the northern flicker and the pileated woodpecker, begin their drumming activity in the period before full sunrise, sometimes as early as 4 or 4:30 in the morning, when the sky is still completely dark over the eastern horizon. The drumming is not foraging. Woodpeckers drum when they forage silently. When they drum loudly and rhythmically, it is almost always territorial or communicative behavior, the equivalent of a song, but produced by percussion rather than voice. And woodpeckers, with extraordinary efficiency, seek out the surfaces that resonate best. Wood is good, dead wood is better, but metal, gutters, downspouts, the flashing around a chimney, a metal chimney cap, is exceptional. A woodpecker drumming on a metal surface in the dark at 4 in the morning can be heard across an entire neighborhood and sounds to a half-asleep person like something systematically working its way through the exterior of their house. It is not damaging anything. It is not trying to get in. It is simply using the best amplifier available to say, "I am here. This is my territory, and I am starting my day before yours has even begun."
But what comes next is something most people have heard without ever understanding what they were actually listening to. On certain nights, particularly in spring and fall when migration is at its peak, you may hear a series of thin, high-pitched calls coming from the sky above your house, not from the trees, from the actual sky, overhead. Multiple voices, sometimes many of them, passing from one direction and fading in another. These are the flight calls of migrating birds. Hundreds of species of North American songbirds migrate at night.
They navigate by the stars, by magnetic fields, by the memory of routes inherited across generations. And as they fly, sometimes at altitudes of several thousand feet, sometimes much lower on overcast nights when they fly closer to the ground to use landmarks, they call. The calls serve multiple purposes: maintaining flock cohesion in the dark, communicating position, and possibly sharing navigational information in ways researchers are still working to understand. They are brief, half a second, sometimes less, and high-pitched enough that many older listeners may not be able to hear them clearly, though they are often audible through open windows on still nights. What you are hearing, if you hear this, is not a resident bird. It is a traveler, a bird that may have left its breeding ground in Canada days ago and will arrive at its wintering ground in Central America days from now, passing over your house in the dark, calling once to the others around it, and continuing south without ever landing in your yard. It will never know your name. You will never know its species. But for one moment, its voice came through your window, and now it is gone, somewhere over the horizon, still flying. If the great horned owl sounds ancient and settled, the barred owl sounds conversational. Its most recognized call, "Who cooks for you, who cooks for you all," a phrase that generations of Americans have used to remember it, has a rhythm and cadence so close to human speech that first-time listeners frequently look around for a person before they look up for a bird. But the barred owl's full vocal repertoire goes far beyond that single phrase. When a mated pair engages in what researchers call a duet, a simultaneous, overlapping exchange of calls that can include hoots, cackles, gurgles, and what sounds genuinely like maniacal laughter, the result is one of the most startling sounds in the American nighttime landscape. People have called the police. People have genuinely believed, in the dark and half asleep, that there were people in their yard engaged in something alarming. What was actually happening? Two medium-sized brown owls, deeply in love in the way only lifelong mated creatures can be, celebrating their territory and each other in the most exuberant vocal display in the North American forest. The barred owl has expanded its range significantly in recent decades, moving west across the country and adapting with remarkable success to suburban and urban environments. The chance that a barred owl pair has established territory in or near your neighborhood is higher than it has ever been. If you hear what sounds like two people arguing and laughing in your yard at midnight, look for the owls. They found each other, and they're not quiet about it. I saved this one for last, not because it is the strangest or the most unsettling, but because it is the one that reaches people most deeply, and the one that I have heard described more times than any other as the sound of something they can't name. The mourning dove does not call at night, but in the minutes before full sunrise, in that particular quality of dark that is not quite dark, when the sky has not yet committed to morning, the mourning dove begins. Its call is not a song in the traditional sense. It is 5 notes, low, hollow, sustained, that seem to come from somewhere just below the surface of the world. Coo, oo, 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 oo. The second note rises, the rest fall away, one by one, until silence. People who grew up in houses where mourning doves nested nearby sometimes describe it as the sound of their childhood home, of summer mornings, of the specific quality of early light before the day had decided what it was going to be. People who hear it for the first time after loss, after the death of someone who used to be in the house with them, after a relationship has ended, after children have grown and left, sometimes describe it as the sound of absence, not of grief exactly, of the space that remains after something has moved on. The mourning dove is named for its call, and the naming is not wrong. There is something in that sound that touches a part of us we don't have easy language for.
something that knows, before our waking mind does, that morning has come and that another day without the person we're thinking of has begun. It has been making that sound for longer than any of us have been here to listen, and it will be making it long after we are gone. Have you ever heard a sound outside your window at night that you couldn't place and lay there in the dark listening until it stopped? Tell me what it was if you know, and if you don't know, describe it in the comments. The chances are good that someone here will recognize it. I'll see you in the next one.